Since the beginning of time, people have been doing stupid things, and the national parks are not exempt from that. There have been some really stupid things that people have done in the national parks, and today I wanted to share some stories about stupid national park behavior. My name is Ash. I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. And even as a park ranger, you can believe I did see some really dumb things while I was in the parks, patrolling around and working there. But today I'm not going to touch on those. Mostly what I want to talk about today is stories that have been in the news recently or things that have happened in the parks that are just plain stupid. So let's jump in. Stupid national park behavior number 1. So back in 2022, there were a couple of people who were in Yellowstone in May, which, surprise, surprise, Yellowstone has so many stupid stories coming out of it. But this one, these people were driving around and they saw a baby bison calf that they thought looked cold. And so what did they do? They picked up the calf and they put it in their car and they took it to a ranger station because they were worried about this baby bison calf being cold. Unfortunately, when the rangers tried to take this baby calf back to its herd, the herd rejected it. They wouldn't take it back. And so that baby bison calf had to be euthanized. Stupid national park behavior number 2. So we're actually going way back in time to 1927. This is just to prove that stupid park behavior is not just today. It's been going on for a very long time. So in 1927, we're going to Yosemite National Park. And in the Yosemite National Park Nature Notes, or this was like their newspaper that they put out, they have a heading that says more about our fawn problem. And basically what had been happening is people were coming to Yosemite and they were taking home baby deer as pets. They wanted to adopt these baby deer. And so a ranger, he was working at his ranger station and he saw a lady drive through, you have to drive through pretty slowly. And he saw that she had a baby deer on her lap. And they were wondering why, all these baby fawns were disappearing. And the rangers began to realize that people were actually taking them home as pets. And so this particular ranger, when he saw this lady with the deer on her lap, he stopped her and said, what are you doing? And she said, oh, it has a broken leg and we're going to take it to San Francisco so that a vet can look at it. And the ranger was like, no. We're not doing that. They took the baby deer. Luckily, in this case, the mother did take that baby deer back, and so it was fine. It survived. But Yosemite National Park did have a disappearing fawn problem in 1927. Stupid national park behavior number 3. So this takes us to Katmai National Park in Alaska. And if you've ever heard of Katmai National Park or seen any pictures of it, this park is famous for all of the brown bears that live in this park, and they stand at the top of Brooks Falls, this little waterfall, and they swipe the salmon out of the falls as the salmon are trying to jump up and over the falls. So you can have hundreds of bears in this area at a time. They're all trying to fatten up for the winter. They're all trying to feed on these salmon. And for some reason, there were 3 men in 2018 that decided it would be a good idea to leave the protected viewing platform. They have it set up so that the bears mostly can't get to you from there. But these men left the authorized viewing platform and went into the river, into these falls to get closer to these brown bears to get better shot, which is just plain stupid. I would say this is the number 1 thing that I've seen working as a park ranger is that people just do not have a concept of how dangerous these wild animals can be. That you really just can't get that close to animals without putting yourself in peril. So the fact that these 3 men left that authorized viewing deck and went into the river where all these brown bears are, Oh my gosh, the brown bears in Alaska get huge. I worked as a park ranger in Alaska. Like, those things are no joke. And I just cannot even comprehend why you would think it would be a good idea to get closer to the brown bears that are literally ripping salmon apart with their teeth right now. I just want to quickly insert and say that the examples that I'm sharing today, these people have been prosecuted. They've been caught. They have had consequences. And so just so you're aware, a lot of these stories were in the news because these people were prosecuted. So don't even think about it. But know that a lot of times the rangers are out patrolling and they are doing everything that they can to make sure that people don't break the rules like this. Stupid national park behavior number 4 has to do with trying to leave your mark in the national parks. Our goal always as responsible national park visitors is to leave these parks better than you found them. That means a lot of times, like, I'll show up and I'll have a trash bag with me so that I can pick up trash as I hike, or just making sure things stay clean and nice. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people don't see it that way when they visit the national parks. Please don't be one of those people. Please leave it better than you found it. But you will see, I've seen it a lot, time and time again, people trying to scratch their name into rocks or scratch their names into trees, stuff like that. And so if you see something, please say something. That just is not acceptable behavior in a national park. But for this story, there was a girl who went around. She went to many different national parks, unfortunately. This was in 2014. And she used acrylic paint to spray paint pictures in these national parks. Now, the dumb thing about this, beyond just, spray painting a national park, is that she left her Instagram handle underneath these paintings, and so it was pretty obvious who had done it. She did try to delete all of her posts so that she wouldn't get caught, but there was another blogger, his name is Casey, and he blogs at Modern Hiker, and he actually found those posts on Instagram and screenshotted them so that we could prove that she was the one who did it. So she was eventually caught, but it was thanks to somebody who had the foresight to, to gather that evidence and to say something and to make sure that she knew that that was not acceptable behavior in a national park. So again, if you see someone doing something, take a picture, take a video, get it down and take it to a ranger, because this girl in this instance was prosecuted and fined, and she was not able to visit national parks for a time. Okay, let's head back to Yellowstone for these next 2 stories. Yellowstone. Oh my gosh, Yellowstone. Okay, these next 2 stories have to do with the bison, the buffalo again. There's a lot of buffalo in Yellowstone, and for some reason people they ignore the horns and they ignore the hundreds of pounds of just sheer power that these animals have, and they just don't care, get too close, or just don't understand. I don't get it, but don't be one of these people. So this first story is a man who we're pretty sure he was inebriated. Like, he had to be. It doesn't make sense. And he was in Yellowstone. He got out of his car. There's a giant buffalo on the road, and he thought it would be a good idea to get out and to taunt this buffalo. And so he's making animal noises. He's like putting his fists out and pretending he wants to punch it and just getting way, way, way too close. Lucky for him, that particular buffalo was not feeling especially aggressive that day. He did bluff charge him a couple of times, but didn't make contact, which really is a miracle, because usually these buffalo will charge and they will gore you if they feel threatened. So, which is the case in the next story. This is stupid national park behavior number 6, is trying to take buffalo selfies. Unfortunately, this is a common occurrence. People want a selfie with the buffalo. In fact, the CDC released a study about people who have been gored in Yellowstone, gored or charged. And the stats on that are pretty interesting. I'll link some stuff below this video that you can read through if you want. But basically, in 2022, there was a lady who was trying to take a selfie with a buffalo. She got within like 10 feet of this buffalo. And a lot of people, when they're taking the selfie, they turn their back on the buffalo to get the selfie. And that buffalo just was not having it. He charged her. A lot of the time, so they use their heads to charge, and they'll buck you up, and so they'll get under you and kind of throw you. So this lady got thrown 10 feet into the air. She also was gored because they have horns, and so she was gored and thrown into the air and had to go to the hospital. Now, this particular story was in 2022, but there were two other instances of getting too close to a buffalo and getting hurt in Yellowstone that same year. And then in 2023, there were even more. So this is a yearly thing. Every single summer, we can count on seeing news stories from people who just get too close and get hurt from the buffalo. So keep your distance, enjoy them from afar. These are wild animals, and you definitely don't want to turn your back on them and get too close. Okay, we need to give Yellowstone a break. We gotta go to a different park. So let's jump to the Grand Canyon, which has seen its fair share of stupid national park behavior, for sure. So there's a couple stories that are just really dumb coming out of the Grand Canyon. Just something that I just like, why? So the first one, and this is stupid national park behavior number 7, is that there was a girl who stood on the edge of the Grand Canyon and she hit a golf ball down into the canyon. And unfortunately, also, while she was hitting that golf ball, her club snapped in half, and half of her club went down into the Grand Canyon as well. This was in 2022. She was an influencer. She had plenty of evidence against herself because she posted her stuff on Instagram. But there were also a lot of people right there because she chose a viewpoint that is literally just like right next to the visitor center. There are a lot of wrong things with this story. But she was caught and prosecuted. And the thing about the Grand Canyon, so just learning moment here for a minute, is things that come down into the canyon from the rim of the canyon can be deadly for the hikers below. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be a small rock as it gathers momentum as it's going down the 5,000 feet deep that the Grand Canyon is. If that were to hit a hiker in the head, it could literally kill them. And so hitting a golf ball down right where there are trails underneath there are people down in there, hitting a golf ball and having your golf club break and fall in as well, like that could have caused a fatality. Never, ever throw anything into the Grand Canyon. Which brings me to the next story out of the Grand Canyon. And what's crazy is these were back in 2022, but they happened within just like 2 weeks of each other. So we had the girl who hit the golf ball. That was actually the second instance of someone doing something dumb like that. The first one was there was a man who hit a baseball into the Grand Canyon. He had his bat and he hit a baseball. And I mean, like I said, I can't even fathom why you would think that was a good idea. But the other thing is he did it from the Yavapai Geology Museum, which again, like there are just people everywhere. There's park rangers everywhere. It's an actual museum that's staffed. And so there's dumb and then there's just really dumb. All right, my friend, we've got to jump back to Yellowstone. I have more goodies for you coming out of here. These next two stories have to do with the boiling water in Yellowstone. And I do want to preface this by saying that I am not sharing any stories that resulted in fatalities. That does happen when people fall into these pools of boiling water. Bad things do happen. So I'm not going there in this video, but there are a couple things that people have tried to do with the boiling water that are just plain stupid. Okay, so this first one happened in 2020, and there were some men hiking with cooking pots, and I guess some other fellow hikers just thought that seemed really sketchy, and so they told a ranger. So the ranger went after to go find them, and what he found was that they were trying to cook chicken in the boiling geyser water. So that's really dumb. There's tons of amoebas, things like that in the water. I just can't imagine why you would want to ingest that. But they were caught and they did not get to enjoy their meal of boiled geyser water chicken. This one might be the dumbest of all. I just cannot get over this. So there was a man in 2018 who tried to, well, he didn't try, he did it. He peed into Old Faithful. The news article says he apparently urinated into it in front of hundreds of horrified visitors at Old Faithful. There are so many people at Old Faithful. There are people everywhere, and there's a huge visitor center, and there's rangers everywhere, and you cannot be in your right mind if you think that that would be a good idea. And the rangers were there, they were yelling at him and telling him to back off, but the hundreds of horrified visitors that got to watch him urinate into Old Faithful just were not expecting that type of show. He did get caught, obviously, but it's just not a good idea to pee into a geyser, and I think a lot of us were really rooting that Old Faithful would actually explode while he was there. It's been funny to talk about the dumb things that people do in the national parks, but these last two stories are actually dumb things that have been done in a national park by the National Park Service. I just wanted to end off with these because it's pretty crazy, and it's cool how far we've come, that we don't allow these things to happen anymore, that the National Park Service is not the one doing the thing anymore, luckily, and that our understanding of preservation and conservation has come really far since the National Park Service was established in 1916. So here's a couple of fun stories from the national parks themselves. The first one is coming out of Yosemite. You may have heard about the Yosemite Firefall. Nowadays, the firefall is a naturally occurring event that when the sun hits a specific waterfall in Yosemite Valley, that waterfall turns red and it looks like fire is coming down the cliffs. You can only see that for a couple weeks in February every year, and only if the conditions are right. So the actual natural Yosemite Firefall is really cool. However, Yosemite actually used to have a fake firefall as well, and that firefall was done by a concessionaire up at Glacier Point, which is about 4,000 feet above Yosemite Valley. And what they would do is every night they would set a giant bonfire at the edge of Glacier Point, and then they would kick it over the side of the cliff and let that actual fire fall down the cliffs 4,000 feet below into Yosemite Valley. People loved this, and hundreds of spectators would come and they would watch this nightly. I just can't imagine. It went on and off for almost 100 years until 1968. They would sometimes allow the people to do it, and then sometimes, depending on the leadership, they'd say no, and then a new person would come in and they'd be like, sure. And so this firefall happened on and off for a really long time in Yosemite, and people would come by the hundreds to watch the fire fall. That's just crazy to me. Wildfire is such a huge part of Yosemite. In fact, there's a lot of big fires in Yosemite every year that can be very devastating. And so to just think that there was once a time where they were intentionally setting fire and pushing it off the cliff for entertainment just blows my mind. Now we've got to close out the stupid national park behavior with one from Yellowstone. Yellowstone National Park actually used to pile their garbage up behind the hotels and behind the visitor centers. They had specific areas they would pile this garbage up so that the bears would come and feed on it, so that the tourists could see the bears. These open pit garbage dumps were just in several key places throughout the parks, and people knew they could go there and they could see the bears feed. The bears would feed on this garbage and the tourists would see the bears, and it was just creating really a lot of problems. People were getting hurt, the bears were getting aggressive, they were going for more food in other places. It was just making it really unsafe. But it's crazy because it really wasn't until 1970 when Yellowstone really cracked down on this and got rid of their open pit garbage dumps and started putting in more bear resistant trash cans and things like that. And so even the National Park Service has done some really dumb things in the parks. Okay, listen, I know that I didn't even come close to touching on all the stupid national park behaviors that you might see in the national parks. Just keep in mind, please, when you're visiting a national park, leave it better than you found it. Leave no trace. Make sure that you're cleaning up after yourself and being responsible while you're there so that we can preserve and protect these beautiful places. And if you enjoyed this and you want to plan your own trip to a national park, please be sure to check out dirtandmyshoes.com or subscribe to this channel for more trip planning videos.